Welcome back. Let's get a reaction now to the SIU report on home affairs. We are joined by March and March's Jacinta Ngobese Zuma and African Diaspora Network's Dr. Vusmuzi Sibanda. Very good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. Dr. Sibanda, let's perhaps just start with you. I mean, the SIU report highlights extensive corruption that's involving foreign nationals and some diaspora communities. What's your reaction to this report?
Thank you very much. Good evening to yourself and the viewers. Look, it is a very worrying, kind of a situation. It is something that definitely, is that needs to be, looked at, very seriously, because, of course, what we know is that people that come from, different parts of the country look at South Africa as, a favorable, preferable, destination, and unfortunately, the corruption that then tends to happen is mainly twofold. It is born out of, that desperation, and which does not legitimize, that it should be done. But one would also believe that, it is not only South Africa that is targeted by this level of corruption. All destinations that are favorable, like the US and so forth, obviously face that. The doorkeeper to that, and which is the most important aspect, is then to say, how do officials deal with this kind of situation, as we have seen that, quite a number of officials actually, have to deal with this. And maybe one of the issues that really did not come out, very strongly in the report is that, the issue of delays that take place, particularly, with the processing of visas. I mean, you would notice that for quite a number of years, over a decade now, the department has been putting directives to try and cope with, the delays that are taking place there. And I am sure that the bulk of these delays are not because, the department really is understaffed, but they are calculated to create bottlenecks that then force, the people that are making applications to be channeled to the, non-formal, the corrupt system where they have to go and pay to try and expedite. As we have seen that some people, their visas seem to be out on the 21st, and on the 22nd, money is coming in. Because every time when you deal with people that are making applications, you hear people talking about, that they've got to push, they've got to speak with people that are pushing for their papers to come out. So we have got indeed, a coordinated, corrupt system that has got very two willing parties that are interested in making sure that they can corrupt the whole system. And unfortunately, the deserving people that come and make applications and try to follow the process, they are the ones that end up waiting for 5 up to 10 years in order for them either to get their asylum seeker processed or to get their visas, finally processed. But those that are willing to pay the money, they don't wait, for a longer period of time. And that is where the big problem really lies.
Jacinta, I see you shaking your head there. I mean, Dr. Sibanda is talking about South Africa being a favorable destination, and that sometimes out of desperation, corruption could be born out of that, even though he does say it does not legitimize some of these actions, but also emphasizing that there are two willing parties in this equation.
Look, I think what Dr. Sibanda is saying echoes exactly what our problem is as March and March, is that people want to give fancy names to all kinds of weird things. First of all, why do people who have problems in their country end up being a problem to other people's countries? This is the biggest problem that I have with the people like Dr. Sibanda, because he is talking about an African diaspora, but now he's not talking about solutions for Africa. He's talking about bringing people to South Africa and making them comfortable with getting documentations to stay in South Africa. How is that going to fix Africa? If you're talking about a diaspora, you're not talking about South Africa. You're not talking about Africans being integrated into South Africa and getting documents, etc., etc. What else does their organization have to offer for Africans to thrive in their African countries? And I think this is a conversation that he and others need to be honest with themselves about. That it's clear now that South Africans are no longer comfortable, are no longer happy with other Africans, especially coming into their country because we're so nearby. You just walk in, you cross the border, you disrespect our country, you keep it in a very different state to how we know it. You bring different weird kind of cultures and all kinds of things that we are not comfortable with. And it has nothing to do with hatred that the likes of Dr. Sibande like putting out there so that they can become victims. But it has everything to do with us as South Africans protecting ourselves. If you go to people who are veterinarians or people who work with animals, they will tell you how they protect certain animals and how they keep them from being extinct by separating them from other animals and allowing them to reproduce. Now, we find ourselves in a situation where we're saying that we're no longer comfortable with this inbreeding that's happening because we're losing our identity as well, on top of everything else. Is it not wrong for us to want to maintain who we are by keeping our culture, our religion, our integrity, our surnames, our heritage, etc., for ourselves? And the rest of Africa can do that same thing for themselves.
So before I give you a moment to react there, Dr. Sibande, because I also see you profusely shaking your head. If we go back to the issue, Jacinta, of this particular report, and this report showing two willing parties that are in place that allows for the corruption that we are seeing, where a foreign national is not willing to wait in that queue, as Dr. Sibande had outlined, and would have the buying power to then bribe that official that is sitting at the border. How are we as South Africans also taking accountability for those officials that are sitting in those places in ensuring that the corruption doesn't even begin there in the first place?
All right, so Katlego, you know, the nice thing about this conversation is that I've just made reference to our very first memorandum that we sent to the Department of Home Affairs. And on top of the list of things that we had demanded, right at the top, was for there to be an audit of their internal structures. And that means that their very own employees and people who have influence, because within the employees, some are complaining that they're getting a lot of pressure from government officials to do certain things for them, for their friends, etc., etc. This is something that we're getting from the officials themselves. So that was on top of the list of things that we had complained about. And what we're saying is we're not absolving South Africans from any blame. We blame South Africans all the time. If you would know this, we even have a campaign currently that is encouraging people to open cases against South Africans that are aiding and abetting illegal immigrants. But we're saying that foreigners themselves are not innocent. And the biggest problem here is that everybody wants to make people coming from all kinds of places seem like they are the victims. And we as South Africans must automatically just be okay with it, or else you're going to label us as xenophobic. All of them are the same. You come into a country illegally, you're a criminal. You're not someone who must be romanticized and treated with child gloves so that you can feel better and feel like you are loved. If you want love, go back home. That's the best place where you can get love.
So, Dr. Sibande, I mean, a number of issues being raised here. You raised the issue that because the corruption exists within the South African borders, it then opens a leeway for this exchange between those that are coming into the country and those that are allowing it. When we spoke to the SIU spokesperson, Kaiser Kganyago, he in fact said of those that are being investigated and arrested now, it's a very small number of these officials. But he did emphasize that there are those at the borders themselves that are allowing for this kind of practice. Now, Jacinta is saying, before we even start speaking about bringing people into the country and ensuring that they're in the country in a particular way, what is the diaspora doing within those communities to ensure that the countries of which the people are coming from are giving better to those people before they even consider South Africa as a destination of choice?
Look, I think the challenge that Ms. Ngobese Zuma is actually having is that we're not really addressing, the problem that is raised by the report. Because if we were going to be looking at the fact that now we are talking about why do we have, this corruption, basically taking place. Now, what Ms. Ngobese is obviously trying to advance are her personal, beliefs of, a right-wing theory of saying you can, close South Africa, maybe to foreigners and where they come from or Africans so that they can fix their problems. And which is something that All countries in the world, by the way, first world countries, countries that have got better resources, are faced with the same kind of problem of an influx, of migrants. That is why we talk of a serious Mediterranean problem. That is why we talk about, migration being so huge in America. The issue is that the people that are then, tasked with making sure that they control, the coming and going out of people, need to make sure that they can deal with the criminals that want to corrupt the system, because the buck stops with them. The ethical requirements, the commitment, the mere fact that somebody is paid a salary to do certain work means that they must be satisfied with their work. They will come across many, many types of criminal activities that they must, they must see from a distance. They must be able to decipher, investigate, and see that, okay, this is criminal, this is not genuine, this is legitimate. But the problem that we have, and which I say it's unfortunate that the SIU has not picked that, it is specifically the fact that you've got people, you've got a system that is clogged. And the clogging of the system at the Department of Home Affairs is not by mistake. It is something that is calculated to ensure that people then end up not following the formal process of making applications, because then people are going to go and use the route where they are going to pay money, because it appears as if the department is broken, the system is broken. I believe that the system that the department has is very it's quite rigorous, but it is for the people that are working within the system, that are corrupting that system, that are doing it for their own benefit. And yes, we hear that this is a very small number of people, but wait until you get to the border and you see people coming in and coming out, and see that people that are entitled to get, for example, 30 days, to come into the country, or to get 90 days to come into the country, they will be given 5 or 6 days despite what they request, until they pay money. Then they are given the number of days that they are supposed to be paying. So the level of corruption is very vast, unfortunately. And as it were, the level of corruptors as well is very vast, because people are desperately coming from these countries that are so broken, like what Ms. Ngobese is saying, that what exactly is happening there, which I think that is a discussion for another day, to deal with the problems that Africa has, that has got these push factors that get people coming into South Africa. But the issue is that because Africa has got such vast problems, and as a result, people will want to come into here, that